Hey everybody, Michael Snyder, Pacific Northwest Weather Watch. Today is December 24th. Happy Christmas Eve to everybody out there. And we've got a weak storm system coming on shore now. Decaying front, not bringing much in the way of precipitation with it, but we do have a stronger storm that'll be rolling through tomorrow and through tomorrow night, bringing some interesting weather with it. We do have some cold air trapped, mainly in eastern Washington, Oregon, BC, and there's going to be some easterly winds, so some of that could get trapped in some of the Cascade Pass and some of the gap areas as well. We'll dive into those details here as we go through the video here this morning, taking a look at things a bit closer. You can see some of that dense fog across eastern Oregon, BC, the Idaho Panhandle, and western Montana. Heads up for that. Should be helping to suppress some of this fog formation with the high and mid-level clouds rolling across much of western Washington, Oregon, and western BC. Actually, a lightning strike out there or two as well with this weak frontal system, but it is decaying. Now, taking a look here at Christmas Eve, we are putting 11 seconds onto our sunlight today. Tomorrow we had 17 seconds. So that is definitely something to look forward to as we roll through the end of December and on in through January. Taking a look at the composite reflectivity on the NAM 3KM. So here goes our initial system today. It is going to bring some light precip across the area, but not much. The main precip and the bulk of it arrives as we go in through very late tonight and it's early tomorrow morning as we get that warm front action. And again, those east winds keep some of that cold air trapped into some of the pass areas here across the Washington, Oregon Cascades, and even up towards British Columbia as well. Frontal system starts to move through. You can see the back side of it here as we go through very late Christmas night into the morning on the day after. And then you see the frontal system push across the area. Now, taking a look at the 80-meter wind speed, you can see the easterly component as we go through this morning. Some gusty winds could be in the North Bend, Enumclaw area right now. I saw the National Weather Service just mentioned 35 miles per hour. The NAM has kind of been pretty high on some of the wind speeds over the next few days, but it does show those gusty winds here. And then we start to kick some gusty southeasterly winds here across the northwest interior, straight at Georgia out there, and bring some gusty winds towards the coastline, maybe Vancouver Island as well. The NAM 3KM is definitely the windier solution versus the European. I'll look at that here in a moment as well. As you can see, we go through, what is this, about Monday night, Christmas night here, and then we go into very early the day after, starting there as we start to bring the flow more southerly, and we cut off those easterly winds, which will end that freezing rain threat across the Cascades. Now, looking at the NAM 3KM, if I scroll all the way out here, you can see some of these huge gusts, but I think it's way overdoing this. I'm not expecting gusts into the upper 40s for Seattle and Olympia or Tacoma here. Nobody is. We don't have any wind advisories up right now. And the European shows much lower wind speeds here, except for some portions of the northwest interior. Could be getting the upper 40s up towards 50 miles per hour. And some of the gusty winds could be hitting some of the coastal areas as well, but not expecting these kind of winds to the interior right now. Just kind of pointing that out. I mean, it's showing up towards 60 miles per hour, even up towards, what is that, Arlington, or just kind of off to the east of Anacortes there. Now, if we take a look here at the mean sea level pressure, so here goes our system on a Sunday, and you can kind of see a pretty good gradient here, but this is not a major windstorm, at least according to the European anyway. And then we scroll on in through the following days here, and we're going to turn the flow back offshore again as this deep low is going to be right off the coastline, but it will be trying to spread precipitation back into the Pacific Northwest. More on that frontal system here in a moment. But you can see the European as we scroll all the way through here, and now we're about, Tuesday morning, the 26th. You can see the gusty winds up across the northwest interior, some of Vancouver Island and the coastal areas as well, but not looking at those mid 40s. I mean, significantly different wind speeds here across the Puget Sound. So just wanted to point that out, but it does show that 44 mile per hour gust here for Bellingham, some gusts across some of the higher terrain there through Whatcom County as well. Now, taking a look at the composite reflectivity. Now, this is the freezing rain threat. And again, we've got some cold air trapped, and we're bringing that east flow, which can really make the cold air stick around there in some of the sheltered locations. And as we go on in through the nighttime hours tonight into tomorrow morning, you can see some of the snow happening for the Cascades, but you also see that freezing rain all the way down to some areas of the Oregon Cascades as well. And this could continue for a few hours as we go through the early morning hours of tomorrow, Christmas Day. So hopefully you've got your traveling done, or you're back and forth across the pass today, or if you got to do so, do it today and just kind of be prepared for the potential for some freezing rain. And this continues out into portions of eastern Washington as well, and the snow spreads across the higher terrain in northeast Washington. There could could be some wintry mix. Places like Wenatchee and maybe even out over, some of the lower elevation areas. You could get some of that freezing rain trapped for a while before that frontal system pushes through and starts to turn those winds southerly across the Cascades and then eventually across eastern Washington. Now, looking at the temperatures here, you can see we do have that colder air trapped, and that's kind of what's giving us that freezing rain threat here as we get that warm front action here. It's not going to really be scouring out that cold air until later on into the 26th. That's why we have the freezing rain event. And this is Spokane National Weather Service, wintry mixed Christmas Day into Tuesday for the Cascade Mountains here. You can see what to expect. Steady snow continues through Monday night here, but they do mention that wintry mix down there and maybe some light freezing rain for some areas, so be prepared for that on the day Christmas. And they do mention also specifically kind of the Wenatchee area and the Waterville Plateau out there, so be cautious while you're driving. You could have a glaze on things out here as we go through the day Christmas. Now, this is accumulated freezing rain here on the high-resolution rapid refresh. We put this into motion, and you can see as we go on in through Christmas, it's not showing as robust amounts as the NAM 3KM, but it does show some of this potential and even across some of the east slopes of the Cascades of Washington as well. So heads up for that. Now, looking at the NAM 3KM, by the way, we'll just go ahead and scroll this through, and it's showing a half an inch here towards some Snoqualmie Pass here right now. I don't think we're going to be expecting that much freezing rain, but we could be looking at a glazing or kind of a coating of the freezing rain as we go on in through Christmas Day. And the European will just run through this as well with the total snow. And you can see it does bring a few inches for the Cascades, better amounts across some of the higher terrain of British Columbia here as well. But it doesn't bring too much down into eastern Washington, but you could see some snow flying across some of the higher hills out there also, but probably not into the Columbia Basin. Now, looking at the European freezing rain as well, and this is probably much more accurate here. You can kind of see 1/10 of an inch, maybe a little bit higher local amounts there, and the gorge a little bit highlighted there also. Now, looking at 18,000 feet, if we scroll back here, this is Christmas Eve morning. This is what we're looking at right now. There goes our weak system here, and then we get the stronger storm moving in on Christmas, the freezing rain threat, some gusty east winds and some southeast winds, northern interior coastal areas, Vancouver Island, western BC, and then our next storm system will be spinning off the coastline here as well. We'll look at this one a little bit more detail tomorrow, but that could have another round of precipitation with it, and then maybe some storms might be targeting California at this point, but we'll see how this trends. We're kind of looking a bit far off for our 156 as of right there. Now, looking at the European on the left versus the GFS on the right, this is yesterday afternoon. There goes our decaying system. Pretty good model agreement in the short term. Then this deep low, you can see pretty good model agreement with that as well. And kind of stretching up towards southeast Alaska or Haida Gwaii. And again, some pretty heavy precipitation totals for some western BC. The GFS a bit rainier versus the European for places like Seattle. And then we have that next system kind of hot on its heels as well. Could be targeting Vancouver Island also, but kind of the strongest portion of the storm hangs off the coastline here. Not looking at a widespread windstorm or anything like that, and no prolonged atmospheric river flooding, at least right now it doesn't look like. And then we scroll up into the future and you can see this storm kind of diving down into California and the European kind of hanging up right offshore, and then the potential off in the future for some additional storms. We'll check that out as we go. Purely fantasy right now. And the European and the GFS are in some disagreement, like I mentioned, about just how much rain is going to fall for places like Seattle. You can see the control run of the European as of last night, only 0.4 of an inch. Some of the ensemble members do have more. The GFS painting a rainier picture as we go through Christmas on in through the following day on the 26th, 1.2 in a 24-hour period. And this is the National Blended Model. They scrolled all the way out here towards about January 1st, and you can see the bigger amounts as these storms hang up off the coastline, most likely, possibly targeting some of Vancouver Island with some really big precip amounts. Vancouver Island down towards Olympic Mountains here, some of the coastal areas, but you see eastern Washington not picking up too much precipitation here as we go on in through the new year. You can see the rain shadowing effect northeast of the Olympic Mountains as well, and about maybe just over an inch here for Seattle as we go into the new year. Now, taking a look at the 6 to 10 day, you can see these odds have been uptrended here a bit as well as we go through January 2nd. This is the 8 to 14 day, but we're taking that with a grain of salt right now. Things can change quite rapidly in that time frame. And also just a reminder, if you're going out to the coastline or if you have interest even in the Puget Sound and around Vancouver Island, up across western BC, Haida Gwaii, some of the tides are pretty high this year, and we do have some pretty intense wave action rolling in at times. The first starting here as we go through Christmas, and then we go go through Christmas night there, you can see the wave action is fairly robust as we go on into the end of December, kind of stretching all the way up and down the west coast, including Vancouver Island up into western British Columbia as well. So heads up for that if you're out and about or if you have interest in the coastal areas. Now, I showed this yesterday, so anybody who didn't see this, this is the January 2024 monthly temperature outlook. It does include much of the west coast here. Monthly precipitation does include portions of Oregon here as well, kind of highlights California there. But this is going out January, February, March, and El Nino, again, classic El Nino signature here. As we go into the late winter and early spring period, we do have a generally above average signal here, and sometimes substantially so. So this makes sense. And this is the precipitation outlook, kind of below average here across some of the Pacific Northwest, again targeting California. This goes all the way out through April, and again with the above average temperature outlook, below average precipitation here. But again, things can still be interesting in these time frames. Just because we have below average precipitation for any given month doesn't mean we won't have storm systems moving through. Now, taking a look at the CFS, you can see that El Nino conditions across the equatorial Pacific, Australia here. There's the Hawaiian Islands. This is Washington, and this is different than what I showed yesterday, at least as of the CFS. This is the new model run. But if we scroll into February, look at that cold tongue. March, April, May, June, July, August, September. Yeah, you don't need me to tell you what that is. That's the possible return of La Nina as we go on into the summer and on through the fall months coming up here, which could bring much more interesting weather for the Pacific Northwest through next year. We'll see how that trends, but it is showing up in all the models actually. So it's going to be interesting to see if we do swing right back into La Nina. And this is the Canadian version of it. You can see again, the warm tongue across the equatorial Pacific, El Nino conditions, but you can see that backing off as we go through May, June, July, August, September, October. You clearly see the return of La Nina showing up in the model. So that'll be something fun for us to watch here over the next few months as well. This is something on the European extended. It goes out 46 days and kind of an El Nino feature here. A Pacific decadal oscillation positive with the low pressure kind of off the coastline, the deep lows here, and kind of the fronts that are decaying by the time they reach Pacific Northwest, and more of a southwesterly flow, keeping us warmer and potentially drier than normal. Kind of a classic El Nino signature there. And this is also looking at 46-day precipitation anomaly. You can kind of see that enhanced convection across some of the equatorial Pacific there. Classic El Nino signature. And again, kind of that precipitation hanging off the coastline, but it does have some of the coastal areas above average down towards California. But look at the deficit that it wants to run here over the next 46 days for some of the Washington, Oregon Cascades and for some of western BC here. But again, we'll be watching this day by day, so we'll get a better picture as we get closer to it. But anyway, yeah, travel today if you have to, kind of be prepared for that freezing rain potential across some of the passes into eastern Washington. Get to where you need to be before that starts to occur, and that probably will be rolling in very early tomorrow morning, so heads up for that. But anyway, hope you guys are liking these videos. Click like and subscribe, and we'll do this again tomorrow, and I will talk to you guys then.